And welcome into Tennessee Tuesday on this Tuesday evening. It is May the 19th. I'm John Blankenship, your host with you tonight. Jason Boshears has the evening off, and we've got a special program tonight. Past Commander-in-Chief of the SCV, Larry McCluney, will be joining us here in just a moment, and we're going to be talking about his latest book tonight. We have been talking about it for a while, but we're going to get a detailed look at what this book is about. It's selling very well, and you're going to want to pick up a copy of it, Paradox of Freedom, A History of Black Slaveholders in America. Going to be good discussion tonight, so I hope you'll stay around for the next about an hour tonight. Should be a good program, but let's start off our evening with our disclaimer to tell you the views and opinions you hear on this broadcast are solely our own, not those of the SCV, its GEC, brigades, camps, or divisions. So there's our disclaimer as we start out the evening tonight. And let's say hello to a few folks that are early joining us on. Mr. Owens joining us tonight from Virginia. Hope he is doing well. Good to see him. And a lot of our regulars on with us tonight. Mr. Steve Reed, who is the new camp commander of the A.N. Wilson Camp 2364, which is a brand new camp in the SCV. So we're glad to have him with us tonight. Al joining us from Tullahoma. Hope you're doing well tonight, Al. Thank you always for watching our program. Also, a shout out to Daniel. He joins us this evening and each week on Tennessee Tuesday. We definitely appreciate your viewership and support. Also, Chuck Roydhouse, of course, from the General Hatton Camp in Lebanon and the McLemore Brigade. Good to have Chuck on with us tonight. Johnny Jenkins also joining us from Springfield, Missouri. Hope all is well up just a little north of me here. Roy Hudson joining us tonight. Of course, Roy and Linda on watching this evening. Good to see them and glad to have them a part of the program tonight as well. David Daniels is, I believe, back in Gainesboro. I know David's been traveling. David, good to hear from you this evening. Also, Ryan Rogers joining us there from the Alabama division. He says to please continue to pray for our camp and the family of the late adjutant and brother Harold there. We'll remember him definitely in our prayers, the family there, thinking about you guys in Alabama. Also joining us from just up the road from me in Kentucky tonight, of course, Kyle Thompson there Let's see. He was broke down in Nashville this weekend after visiting headquarters. Ooh. Hope it wasn't too bad. Good to hear you're back home, and hope you're safe up there weather-wise as well. David Pope, of course, in the Valley of East Tennessee, joining us tonight. David has a show on Friday evenings, and we'll be talking about that throughout the program tonight as well. And, of course, the Florida man, Sean McFall, joining us, who also has a program on the network, and we'll tell you more about his show coming up tonight as well. So we've got a great program. Hope you'll stay along with us for the next 2 hours. And joining us 2 hours, man, we're going to be long tonight, Larry, if I've already got 2 hours in mind. And somebody told me past Commander-in-Chief Tom Strain, when we were up in East Tennessee for the Tennessee Division reunion, he said, man, you and Jason talk forever. I'm like, man, you get us going, we'll take this show 2 hours. It have to, but Jason's not with us, so we'll be a little shorter tonight. But we're glad to have Larry McCluney join us. So Larry McCluney is our guest tonight. He's a past commander-in-chief of the SCV and also an author who has several books under his belt over the past several years. We're going to talk about one of those tonight, Paradox of Freedom, which is one you've heard us advertising on SCV Chat for a while now. And many folks have a copy. I've got a copy right here, and we're going to be going through that, talking a little bit about it tonight. Now, again, we're not going to give away everything because we want you to buy a copy so you can read it for yourself. But a great research Larry did, I know, for over 3 years he worked on this book, and an excellent book that you're going to want to pick up. So let's welcome him into the show tonight. Larry McCluney. Larry, good to have you.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about in this segment a little bit, Larry. Folks that may not know you, of course, you're from Mississippi. You've served as the commander-in-chief of the SCV. Tell folks that may be watching tonight, who is Larry McCluney, not just in the SCV world, but outside of that? I know you're an educator and an author. Let folks know who you are.
I just retired a year ago this month as a public school teacher after teaching for 33 years and 29 years as a college instructor in history. I have a BA and MA in history. My students used to call me professor all the time, even though I didn't have a PhD. But I think I've done everything there is to get a PhD except just go to school and get the sheepskin itself.
There you go.
I have a lovely wife. We've been married for 33 years, been together for 35. Annette, I think you've met her, John.
I have. Absolutely.
She's usually my right hand everywhere I go, stuck to the hip. And, I just, very passionate about my writing and so forth. I have a interesting style. It's a writing style is not just meant for historians. We all know how history can be kind of boring.
Sure.
When you read a book and you go like, who wrote this? Who their audience is. And I write for readers, and I put a lot of research into it. And, just for those who read my books, one of the things you'll notice is that I heavily document everything. But other than that, I'm just passionate about history. And I guess I got that from my dad because one of my books has a picture of me, not even a year old, sitting on a cannon at Shiloh with my mom and dad. And I guess I inherited that from him. And it's just kind of stuck with me since then. And after teaching for 33 years, I finally got to do what I wanted to do, and that's to do research and write. So, and I think I have a winner here, as you can tell by the banner behind me. And this past weekend, I was very fortunate and very shocked and surprised that I won the Douglas Southall Freeman Literary Award in History from the Military Order of Stars and Bars. And somebody told me there that I have good company because Douglas Southall Freeman, who was it? Not Douglas Southall Freeman, but excuse me, let me grab his book.
Well, let's get it here.
It was Shelby Foote.
Okay, yeah, from Shelby County.
Company with Shelby Foote because he won that award. So I was kind of astonished and surprised with that. So who knows? Maybe after I pass away, my books will really be worth something then, and I'll be the next Shelby Foote, only dead.
Well, we hope you're with us a lot longer, Larry. Hope you've got several more years with us. Let's talk about, you mentioned your love of history kind of come from your dad. How did that kind of spark? When did you learn about Confederate ancestors, and what got you interested in the SCV? Kind of how did you come in there?
My dad, he always told me about his high school teachers, and, he was a baby boomer. So the history of World War II was still fresh on their minds and so forth like that. And he always told me about the teachers that influenced him in school. And they always showed actual film footage from World War I and World War II. And he was just, my dad was a high school graduate. That was as far as he went with it. But the love of history was always with him. And I think that was passed down to me through him. And growing up, we always visited battlefield parks. I mean, vacations was usually educational. We went places like that, like Vicksburg, Shiloh, different places. And that was just passed down to me and instilled in me. I've always known that I had Confederate ancestors, and doing research and so forth. Well, let me just put it this way. I'm very fortunate because somebody did the history in our family and traced them all the way back to Scotland. And I know what clan that I belong to and so forth, as most of us in the South can make that Irish-Scottish connection. But I think because of that family history book, when I was real young and started reading and looking at things, I began to realize I had a Confederate ancestor, and the war between the states, war for Southern independence, became a passion of mine. Some people say, I guess the best way to put it is they still hear the guns.
Yeah. And
I actually believe I do. I'm wrapped up in reenacting. I've been doing that ever since 1994. And, I try to do things exactly the way they did it back then whenever I go out in the field and so forth, because there's just some things you can't learn by reading a book except by experiencing it yourself. But my love and passion for history, like I said, was passed down from my dad. And I know right now, for what I'm about to say, my mother's probably rolling over in her grave too, because she was a Yankee. She was from Pennsylvania, and she had to come down south and finally married her a Southern boy. But the interesting thing about her family is that her grandmother was a Booth.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah. And her grandmother was from West Virginia. We all know West Virginia was part of Virginia at one time. And when John Wilkes Booth shot we'll say Lincoln, the family did change their name. They dropped the E, and Booth, her name Booth does not have an E on it. We cannot 100% prove that she is part of the Booth lineage, but there is no discrepancies that says she's not, if you know what I mean.
Interesting connection.
Yeah. So I got that from her side. I've got this from my side, and just by my readings, I have discovered 20 Confederate ancestors, and I know they're all mine because McCluney's not a name that
it's not a very common.
Yeah. It's a good Scotch-Irish name, and they all have McCluney for the last name. So,
well, of course, Larry, a lot of folks know you as General Beauregard, as you portray and reenact. And tell folks how did you pick Beauregard? What was your interest in him?
I had no interest.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
I had no interest. Of course, Dr. Kurt Fields, who portrays U.S. Grant. Spitting image.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Looks just like him.
Oh, yeah. He's the same height and weight and everything, same demeanor.
And he's always in character. He's always in part.
Even in public life, he carries those qualities because he studies the man in and out. And, a lot of people don't realize that he's an SCV member as well.
Mm-hmm.
But he talked me into it. He said that I have the same height and weight. So I grew the goatee like Beauregard that I've been wearing for years now. And I started studying the man and got deeply involved, and didn't know that much about him except the basics that everybody knows. He fired on Fort Sumter. He won Manassas, and of course his failure at Shiloh.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I dug into the man and the character that I portray, I said, there's a story here, and there hasn't been a biography written on Beauregard since the 1950s. And so that was one of my books. In fact, that was my third book that I wrote, was a biography on Beauregard called In Beauregard's Defense. And I point out in there that he is the second most victorious general in the Confederate Army next to Lee.
Oh, wow.
And it's just that people only remember him for his loss at Shiloh. And he kind of gets a raw deal because, and I won't give the whole book away because people can read it, but I call it in Beauregard's Defense because I defend him for his actions at Shiloh and thereafter, because he gets into kind of like a feud with Jefferson Davis. Davis sent him west because he was nominated by the Confederate Congress to run for president in 1862 in February. And Beauregard declined it anyway and decided he wanted to get away from the politics and all. But other than that, I live here on the Mississippi Delta. My first book was called The Yazoo Pass Expedition. And I actually live less than 5 miles from Fort Pemberton. And my inspiration was Henry McCabe. He's been dead now for about 10 years. He stayed on me for years to write the book on the Yazoo Pass Expedition. And I finally did, got it published about 1.5 to 2 years before he passed away with dementia. But I wanted that published, and it's the only book out there on it. You can find a lot of stuff on the expedition and a lot of different histories. Mm-hmm. It's the only standalone book, and it's, for some reason, this newest book I've written is really brought to life a lot of my older books because sales have increased on those as well, especially in my first one. Yeah. My first one's really picked up at Yazoo Pass because metal detectors, believe it or not, these people who look for artifacts wanted the book to get the maps and things like that.
Oh, wow. That's perfect. Mm-hmm.
So, but other than that, I'm a kind of a simple, laid-back guy. I did the 2 years as commander-in-chief and got a lot done pushing us forward, trying to modernize the organization and drawing young people in. But I'm happy now to just sit back and support the SCV in any capacity I can. A lot of people want to call me, past commander-in-chief, but I'm just a regular member like everybody else.
Well, great job you do. Of course, you mentioned the books there. The first book, Larry, of course, as you grow, how have you felt like you've grown in your writing since the first book?
My first publishing company, which was History Press or Arcadia Press out of South Carolina, one of the things that kind of, I guess, perplexed me was that they told me, don't write any more than 150 pages. That includes bibliography, the notes, everything like that, including pictures. Because it said today, if it's more than 150 pages, people won't read it because people don't read. And, I decided to venture off further because I had so much more I wanted to write outside of 150 pages. And I really rely upon my readers' opinions. I always ask people when they buy a book, I give them my business card and said, email me. Tell me what you think. I want to know your opinion because writers cannot grow unless they get feedback from the writers. Readers. And, helped me mold my books. In fact, this last book right here, the newest one that we're going to talk about tonight, my editor, who read the book and made suggestions and so forth, I wanted a non-political book, which, of course, people will say, well, it's going to be political because of the subject, but it actually is not a political book. It's a history. It's a narrative history, but the editor is from Australia.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I wanted somebody who was non-biased, was not going to take one side or the other. And he was very, very helpful. In fact, he is I would say he's a member of the Australian version of the FBI we have here. He's a historian. He was born in Canada, got a degree in Canada, went on to England, got his master's there, and then moved and married and lives in Australia. And he was very critical of the book. If there was something that he said that's just not going to float or jive, he didn't pull any punches. He was very upfront and honest. And believe it or not, you wouldn't believe the sources that he sent me that's in Australia on the subject. Australia had a keen interest in the war and what was going on in America at the time. He sent me a lot of newspaper clippings and things of that nature, which were very, very helpful. But my good friend in Australia, we got down to the last chapter of the book, and he says, Larry, you're going to have to rewrite that last chapter. He says, everything else was great. I have to rewrite the last chapter, which kind of went against my principles because the last chapter focuses on blacks going through the war, free blacks who owned slaves going through the war, and the emancipation and Reconstruction. And he says, Larry, you're too biased. You need to take a step back. I know with your background, SCV and Southern beliefs and values, you're going to have to present both sides of the issue. You're going to have to present the woke side as well as your side. And he said, it's going to have to take a rewrite. And so I went out, and the top woke authors out there, Divine, who wrote Confederate Emancipation, please, y'all, unless you just want to read a bunch of woke garbage, don't get it. Gallagher, these are top Civil War historians, even McPherson. And they said absolutely there were no blacks whatsoever in a combat role that served in the Confederate Army. Those that were involved were forced. And their point that they make is that if there were, how do you prove it? Because look at Confederate muster sheets.
Sure.
And nowhere on Confederate muster sheets shows the race or even the sex of these people. You look at a muster sheet that says John Smith, and most African Americans at the time had English names that was given to them by their owners or passed down through family. So how do you tell if John Smith's black or white? You can't. But if you look at federal muster sheets, they distinguish the unit, whether it's United States colored troops or if we knew for a fact the regiment, like the 54th Massachusetts, is black. So that was the point that they were making. If there were any troops, you would find them in the muster rolls. So I made that point, and as a result, here we are in the 21st century, more and more African Americans who actually served in the Confederacy are starting to be brought to light, brought to surface.
It's true. They are.
Their point that they make is that no Confederate troops were authorized by the Confederate Congress till March of 1865, which is a fact. But that was for the Provisional Army. There were no provisions for state troops. The state governments could actually put blacks in their state units. And just as I published this book, it was too late. It was already sent to the printer and everything. I uncovered a soldier on the muster sheet from a Natchez, Mississippi company.
Oh, wow.
That was black, and it's written on the muster sheet by the first sergeant that this person is black. But I'll take it a step further. The person was also female.
Interesting.
And it's indicated on the muster sheet that this is a black person. They were female. They drilled and trained with the company and wore a uniform. And when the company was mustered into service, they marched through the streets of Natchez, and the owner saw the girl and said, "She belongs to me." And they said, "She belongs to the unit now, and she's going off to war."
Wow.
So, it's interesting that after 3 years of writing this, 2 years of research, a year of writing this, somewhere you got to cut it off. And then when you cut it off, you begin to realize
you find something else.
You find something else. You find something else that, I wish I had this in my book, because I could have put the muster sheet in there.
Yeah.
So
that's what I love about history, Larry. It's never ending. You always are discovering something. Just when you think you have it all figured out.
Yeah. Exactly. And I don't profess to know everything about it, but I got inspired to write this actually about 4 years ago, before I retired.
Before you get into that, let's take our first break, because we'll kind of get into the book. Yeah. And I think that would be a good lead off of how it inspired you to write this and research it.
Sure.
Well, again, this is a great conversation tonight. Larry McCluney is our guest here on Tennessee Tuesday. He's going to be with us throughout the show tonight. We do want to say thanks to our sponsors, our Patreon members tonight that support the network and the channel, Tennessee Tuesday and SCV Chat, and all the programs you hear. Without these fine individuals, this network would not exist. We need your help and support. Again, you can go to scvchat.com. You'll find a link there of how you can become a Patreon member and support the channel with the names that you see scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Again, thanks to those folks for making it possible tonight. We also want to say thank you to our many regular sponsors that you hear that are a show sponsor. They pay $80 a month to be a sponsor. And let's go through some of those tonight and say thank you to Dr. Chris Cummings, who is in Oxford, Mississippi, Modern Medicine and Southern Hospitality. Dr. Cummings is a specialist in knee pain. So as we get older, we start to deal with that. So Dr. Cummings, again, one of our sponsors tonight here on Tennessee Tuesday. Also, 31strengraving.com, the 31st Regiment Engraving. You see some of the products that they make there and can specialize and customize for you. You see the bracelets there, one of those we see out a lot. So we appreciate them tonight and their sponsorship here of Tennessee Tuesday. Also, other sponsors tonight, of course, our very own Larry McCluney, who is our guest this evening, and Paradox of Freedom, which we're going to be talking more about coming up here in just a few minutes. And we also appreciate Larry's sponsorship of our network tonight. Beauregard's Tailor, again, you can visit their website, beauregardstailor.shop. They do a wide variety of things, of t-shirts, reproduction flags, lapel pins, and more. Visit them to learn more. And thank you again to them for their sponsorship as well. I got to visit the museum at Market Hall back when the National Convention, the SCV Convention, was there a couple of years ago. A wonderful museum in Charleston, South Carolina. Their motto is that the flag is out, they are open. The regular hours are Thursday through Sunday from 11 until 4. The museum at Market Hall since 1899. One of our sponsors also on Tennessee Tuesday. And finally, tonight, our regular show sponsors, the Sam Davis Home and Museum, which is in Smyrna, Tennessee. You need to make your trip up to Smyrna, spend the weekend there, and tour the property. And you can see the many different things inside and outside of the home, and also visit the grave, the boyhood hero of the Confederacy, Sam Davis. So make sure you visit his home and museum to learn more about opportunities where you can become a member and help support the work at the Sam Davis Home. You can visit samdavishome.org. Our sponsors tonight here on Tennessee Tuesday. We're going to go ahead and take our first break. We'll come back after this. We'll be talking more with Larry McCluney tonight on Tennessee Tuesday.
Was your great-grandfather a traitor or a patriot? Today's politically correct are trying hard to take away the heritage of the brave Confederate soldiers who fought and died for their land. But one thing is certain, they can't change history. Those Confederate soldiers were fighting for the same reason soldiers fight today. They were fighting against homeland invasion. We believe that the desecration of the bravery, patriotism, and honor of those men should not be allowed. They were outmanned and outsupplied, but they were never outfought. They were proud men who believed in fighting to protect their dignity, their homes, and their families. If you're the male descendant of a Confederate soldier, we'd welcome you to join with us in the preservation of that heritage. We're the Sons of Confederate Veterans. Check us out on the internet at scv.org or call us at 800-MY-SOUTH. That's 800-697-6884. Sons of Confederate Veterans, dedicated to preserving the reputation of men like Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, and your great-grandfather.
Major James Daniel Richardson, 1843 to 1914. Major Richardson of Rutherford County, Tennessee, was a Confederate veteran, statesman, and historian whose life reflected both service and leadership. During the war between the states, Richardson left his studies to join the Confederate Army, serving nearly 4 years with the 45th Tennessee Infantry, rising from private to adjutant and officer. He was wounded during the Atlanta campaign, carrying the effects of that service for the rest of his life. After the war, he returned home to build a distinguished career in law and public service. Richardson served in both houses of the Tennessee General Assembly before representing Tennessee in the U.S. Congress for 2 decades, eventually becoming House Minority Leader. He also became a noted historian, compiling the messages and papers of the Confederacy and preserving important records of Southern history for future generations. Remembered as a devoted Tennessean, Richardson's life stands as a lasting example of service to his state, his people, and his heritage. To learn more historical facts about Confederate veterans, visit TennesseeSCV.org. And welcome back into Tennessee Tuesday. It's Tuesday, May the 19th. This is season number 2, episode 18, and we are glad to have you with us watching tonight. Thanks to all those that have commented so far. Larry, some nice comments about your books already this evening. So I know many of our folks watching have picked up copies of some of your previous books, but I did see a comment in one of the chats here. Somebody says, I've got to get Paradox of Freedom. And they need to get that, and we're going to learn why they need to get that tonight. As Larry McCluney is our guest. He's a past SCV commander-in-chief, also an educator and author and historian and reenactor as well. Again, Larry is from Mississippi, and we appreciate him joining us tonight. And Larry, let's continue our conversation as we get into the book this evening and kind of what inspired you to write this book and research it.
Well, before we do that, I got to send a shout out that I saw in the chat. Chuck Roadhouse, a good friend that I met this weekend at the MOS&B National Reunion. He said, cigar smoking, award-winning author, and all-around good guy. That's Larry. I appreciate that, Chuck. But yeah, like I was saying, about 4 years ago, I was sitting in my classroom during a break, and I came across an article that was written in 2013. And it was in a magazine online titled Roots. The Roots is what it's called. And you can Google it. It's an African-American magazine. It was about a 4-page article written on free blacks who owned slaves. And the Roots magazine acknowledged that this happened, which is kind of unusual for an African-American magazine to acknowledge such things. And they went in to start writing and naming some of these prominent free blacks who owned slaves. And I started looking at it, and I started Googling, and I said, there's got to be a story here somewhere. And I started taking interest in it and realized there is not a single comprehensive book on the subject.
Wow.
You can find it in state histories, maybe regionals. It's brought up in a lot of books. With different, small little snippets. That's just like when I was growing up in our Mississippi history class, we always talked about the free black by the name of William Johnson, better known as the Barber of Natchez, who owned 20 slaves. But other than that, it's an oddity. You don't hear anything about it. So I took that article and I started researching, and I came across Dr. Carter Woodson. Dr. Carter Woodson is the father of Black History Month. And he wrote the Encyclopedia of Negro History. And one of the features of my book which is where I really started at, was that he had the 1830 census, census, and I was just fascinated by looking at it. He broke it down. Every state in the U.S., north, south, east, and west, had free blacks who owned slaves, including the territories. And like I discussed with you, John, the Arkansas was a territory at the time. They had one free black who owned 4 slaves, and his name was Free Bob.
Yeah.
It was just fascinating because from 1830 to 1850 was the high point of free blacks who owned slaves. Is when they became the most prosperous and most prominent and so forth. So I started researching, and I came across, of course, everybody knows about the 1619 Project.
Sure.
Where they say that's when slavery started in America. It's not true. It is not true. It is just a political thing. But slavery, as we know it, African slaves, started in the colonies, not in the English colonies, but in Florida, a Spanish colony in 1526, if I remember correctly. And in the American colonies, the English colonies, there was no such thing as slavery until about 1660. Everybody was indentured servants, even Africans. And as a result, that's how a lot of free blacks, they got their start, was their families were indentured servants. They got their freedom, and then they become descendants of them. Now, a lot of people don't realize this, and I bring it up in the book and show it. In the colonial charter of Massachusetts, that was the first colony that actually legalized slavery.
Wow.
And everybody thinks it all was legalized down south. No. And I'll go through the little snippets and so forth, but the book is 10 chapters. It starts with colonial time. Well, first it starts off why I wrote it, the foundation of it. Second chapter is colonial times, and I take you through the American Republic, the 1830s, the 1850s, and so forth and so on throughout the time periods. But I focus a lot on the colonial time because this is the foundation of free blacks, their families and so forth. And I'll bring up one that I think everybody will find interesting. Well, let me point this out. Your states, when they become states, the states who had the largest population of free blacks who owned slaves was Maryland, Virginia, South Carolina, and Louisiana. Now, the one thing those 4 states had were they all started off as colonies.
Sure.
And they followed that rule of indentured servitude, freedom. And what is indentured servitude was you had a contract, contract holder. He paid your debts, and you worked for him for free for a contracted amount of time. And then once your contract was complete, it was his duty to help you get a start in life, whether he gave you land, money, tools, whatever, so that you can start off in life. And believe it or not, I'll use Virginia as an example. Those indentured servants, once they become free, they were considered citizens of the crown. They were treated just like white Englishmen, and they could own property and so forth.
How were they looked at, Larry? How did, let's say, other whites at the time, maybe after their indenturement was done, how were they looked upon?
Well, they weren't frowned upon. You don't see it becoming frowned upon until Virginia starts making laws in the 1660s, creating slavery in Virginia. And then they started passing laws about outlawing interracial marriages and so forth. But there was a lot of interracial marriages in these southern states or colonies at the time, way before those laws were passed. And I'm going to use, say, Louisiana, for example. There was an African, her name was Coin. Her French name was Marie Therese Metoyer. And she married a Frenchman when Louisiana was controlled by the French and the Spanish. And she lived in Natchitoches, Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
And her and her husband had several children together. Of course, they would be mulattoes, half-breeds. And he decided he got what he wanted from the colony, was ready to go back to France, and he divorced her. And to settle the divorce, he gave her 67 acres of land to settle the divorce. He went back to France, and what does she do? She takes that 67 acres, and that's in the mid-1700s. By 1816, when she dies, she had 12,000 acres.
Oh, man.
A huge plantation. She owned slaves. And when she dies, and if you can look at the banner behind me, this is her son and daughter, and they would continue the plantation after she dies. And that plantation today is a state park in Louisiana, and they tell her story.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And that's just an interesting aspect right there. They would become very highly educated young people growing up in French Louisiana and so forth. The book is full of stories like that. I bring to life and I humanize these people and show that they were no different than us. And they tried to, I guess the best way, the points I try to make is, some people say, well, why would black people want to own black slaves? Well, same reasons. One, benevolence. They owned family members to protect them.
Yeah.
Number two, they owned them for economic reasons, the same reasons why whites were buying slaves. They owned them for social reasons because they wanted to lift their bases up from the positions they were in to aspire to become wealthy and socially known. And a lot of them were very accepted in white society at that time. The book has several stories on people like this. You
mentioned William Johnson from Natchez, Mississippi. Mention a little bit about him, Larry, because I know you know a little about him, and folks may not. I know he was a free black as well, correct?
Yeah, well, he was born into slavery. His father was white. His mother was black. He was born into slavery. And his father had a conscience. He said, I will not own my son.
Mm-hmm.
And he freed him. He made sure he got a basic education. And then when he was old enough to go out on his own, he learned a trade to become a barber. And he had great business sense. He would take that money, invest it. He would own barbershops in Natchez, Port Gibson in Mississippi, Vicksburg, Mississippi. He owned a freight line. He owned bathhouses. He owned bookstores. He also was a money lender. And most of his, it was hard sometimes to go to banks to get money if you weren't established, if you didn't have a line of credit. And his number one customers that borrowed money from him were white politicians, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
He was very well accepted in the Natchez society. In fact, he will be murdered.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be murdered in a land dispute by a neighbor that lived a couple of houses down, who was also of color. It was a mixture of Indian, white, and African. Mm-hmm. And his son, William Johnson's son, witnessed the murder. And at that time, there were laws that said blacks could not take whites to court for felonies like this and so forth. So how did this man get off of it? Was he had a good lawyer. His lawyer says, when you go before the court and they notice that you are of color, don't mention that you are of African descent. Only mention that you are white, and of Native American, because the law said that's considered white. And his son couldn't take the man to court. And the city of Natchez, the white population, cared so much about William Johnson that they pretty much chased the guy out of town, because back then, if you really wanted to ruin somebody's reputation and harass them, you put it in the newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
And the white citizens that were wealthy flooded the Natchez newspapers with comments about this guy. And it got to a point that he just couldn't live there anymore, and he left. And that's the last I know about this guy. Whatever happened to him, I don't know. But, you know, I point out also how slavery in chapter 1 about the colonial times, I point out about how slavery started in America as we know it. And what a lot of people don't realize, and some people do suspect, but they didn't know where to go look, and that is, it was done by a black man. He owned 5 indentured servants. 3 of them were white, 2 of them were black, and one of the black indentured servants was continuously breaking his contract, running away. Eventually, this black indentured servant holder takes the man to court in colonial Virginia, and the court said that you have to go back, finish your contract out, and then they took it a step further. They said, since you've broken your contract so much, you are now an indentured servant for life.
Wow.
And that first slave, his name was John Casser. So it was started there and then perpetuated from the way we understand slavery is today. But it started off with an indentured servant who kept breaking his contract. Yeah, interesting, isn't it?
Well, Larry, you know, we talked a little bit before we went on. What was life like? And this is, I think, since you've become so knowledgeable on this subject, what was life like for a free black in that time that may not even just been a slaveholder? I think of an example here in Gibson County in West Tennessee. One of my ancestors freed the first black in Gibson County, a man by the name of Peter, who was 50 years old in 1828. What was life like for him in the South, especially at that time?
Depending on where he lived at, what type of skills he had, a lot of these free blacks would become merchants. They used their skills, such as building skills, blacksmith skills. They knew trades that they learned while they were being held in servitude, and they used those trades, those skills, to make a life for themselves. But let me paint this picture. Just because you were free, you couldn't go just anywhere you wanted. A lot of the different state laws at that time stated that once you were free, you either had to leave the county or the state. And not all states would allow blacks to enter within the boundaries of their state. I'm brought to remember that there was one state that would not allow blacks to live within it, period. And that was Illinois, the land of Lincoln.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So
it really shows that this slavery as a whole was not just as we hear, it was all in the South. That's only where it took place.
Yeah. Well, you know, I pointed out that census, there were free blacks who owned slaves in every state, even in the North. Now, the interesting thing is, the further up in the upper South, including the North, there were more free blacks, but they owned fewer slaves. I think the free blacks in the census that I point out that owned slaves, they owned anywhere from 1 to 4 slaves at the most.
You think is that agriculture related? The land was different than it was in the deeper South?
Well, that and it had an agricultural issue there because cotton didn't need the large labor force and so forth. But a lot of these blacks that owned slaves up north used them for body servants, house servants, things of that nature. A lot of them owned family members to protect them and so forth. But yet they still had to pay taxes on them to the federal government because the federal government, you know, the 3/5 law. As you go into the upper South, you see fewer free blacks who own slaves, but a little bit more slaves. But the irony about it is the further south into the deep South, there were fewer free blacks who owned slaves, but they owned large numbers of slaves. Take, for example, William Ellis of South Carolina. By the time he dies, it was estimated that at one time he owned somewhere close to 200 slaves. The day he dies, he had 171. But somewhere in that time period, he owned a maximum of 200 slaves. That's even unheard of by white slaveholders.
Let me ask you this, Larry. This is an interesting question that comes to mind. What was it like? Let's maybe using him as an example. You may not, but these facts just may not be known. What was the like for the slaves that lived and worked on these plantations under these black slaveholders? What was their life like?
Very good point. There was a Jewish abolitionist who traveled throughout the South. Olmsted. Frederick Law Olmsted in the 1850s. And he wrote a book on the cotton states. And he wanted to travel through every state that had slaves. And he wanted to compare them, how slavery was. By the time he gets to Louisiana, he finds a black slave that he was interviewing that was owned by a free black. And he asked the slave how he felt about being owned by a black man. And he said he didn't like it. He didn't like it at all. He'd rather have been owned by a white man because he said we would be treated better by whites than we would black slave masters. Yeah.
Not the answer I was expecting, but
William Johnson that you brought up, the barber of Natchez, we know about him because he kept a diary, and all of his children were highly educated. Went to Catholic schools in Natchez and in New Orleans. They were extremely educated. But the interesting thing is, in his diary, he points out he does not write and come out and say he beat a slave. But he does point out in his diary, he wrote daily all the time, whether it was just, a couple of lines or something major that happened that day.
And this diary is available, by the way. I've been to Natchez and seen the museum. You can purchase a copy.
Oh, yeah.
You
can go online. You can go online to Amazon, anywhere, and order the book called The Barber of Natchez, his diary. But there's a passage in there, it's like a one line. He said one day that he was having problems, and I cannot remember the slave's name. I believe it was Nate. Says, having problems with Nate today. We'll have to correct that problem. The next day he writes, I don't have any more problems with Nate. Now, he doesn't say he beat him, but it insinuates
something occurred.
Something occurred to correct that measure. And I did read somewhere that William Johnson wrote in his diary, he said that I am the father of my slaves. And when they get out of line, just like my children, they need to be corrected. He doesn't say he spanks them or beats them. He just says.
But you can read between the lines and start.
You can read between the lines, And I've in my research, I read about the buying and selling of slaves by these slaveholders. There was a slaveholder in Louisiana, went all the way to Virginia to buy 20 slaves to bring them back to Louisiana.
How was that looked upon? Was that easy for him to do, Larry, or was there a lot of animosity between the white slaveholders? Did he pay more for his slaves than a white?
He bid on them. He bid on them just like everybody else. Usually most of them had an agent that did it for them. But it was nothing uncommon for them to show up at slave auctions and bid on them just like the whites did. And let me say this. If you look at the cover behind me of the book, there's two major colors that are being presented. A brownish color standing for mulattoes. And if you look at the spine of the book, it's black. Black standing for the Africans who were here in America who owned slaves. Now, I give credit to Frank Powell, the publisher of Scuppernong Press, who did this. He published my last 3 books. It was his idea to do this. And I thought, perfect, because I wanted to point out that all these free blacks who were slaveholders weren't just mulattoes. There was an African who owned a plantation in Georgia. And when he got his freedom, he becomes very wealthy there. And he takes all of his wealth and he moves to Africa, lives in Liberia. But his plantation is being run by his brother. He would come to America once a year to check the books, see how much money was made, and take his wealth to Africa with him. So, you know, we think about in modern terms today about American industries and businesses in other countries.
It's happening then.
Here you have a black man owning a plantation in America, but the only time he ever comes here is to check the books, see what profits are made, and so forth, and take the money back to Africa.
Larry, this is stuff that people don't know about. It's been covered up, whether intentionally or just not talked about and forgotten about, that this is a real thing, and you can document it too. These are not just theories and ideas you put together.
I would say about 70% of the book is primary material. You can look at it. It's either books written at the time, biographies, diaries written at the time, newspapers that were written at the time, and so forth like that. The interesting thing, though, I will point out, is that these people were no different than the whites of the time period. They wanted to lift themselves up on a social scale. That's the reason why you start seeing the free blacks who owned slaves in the Deep South starting to own plantations. They felt like to become socially accepted, we must follow the leader. Do as they did. Do as others have done. And, you know, that was the goal, to become a planter, to be wealthy, socially accepted. And a lot of these free blacks were. And as a result, the old saying about keeping money in the family, as you hear about rich people who married cousins and things like that way back then, it was nothing uncommon for a free black family to get their son or their daughter hitched to another free black who came from a wealthy family. You can marry within your social stratus or marry above your social station, but you did not marry below. And you know, I'm brought to mind about a couple whose family hooked them up in Mississippi. They were both mulattoes, which is a key thing. A lot of these people who were mulatto wanted them to marry mulattoes. And they wanted them to come from free families who had wealth, who had prestige, and they married within that social status to keep the money within the family, to keep the family name, to keep the social standings, and so forth like that.
Larry, here's a question I see. Somebody has sent me a message on. They didn't want to ask it publicly, but it's a very good question. We've talked about mulatto, and we commonly know what that means. A mixed race there. The question they're asking is, when a census taker was taking this, were they taken for their word that they were mulatto, especially after the war? What determined that?
Well,
is there an error to that, or?
No, well, you could pretty much tell by looking at someone if they were mulatto or not. You know,
was that frowned upon at the time? Let's say you're in Gibson County, Tennessee, after the war. You say that. Were these people less respected by ones that just say black or Negro in the census? Were they looked at different?
The census would report that they were black.
Yeah.
Because, let me say this. It was not until about 1965 that most southern states had on the books that if you had 1/16 African-American blood in your family line, it didn't matter whether you looked white or you considered yourself white. According to the law, if you had 1/16 black blood in your family line, you were considered black.
Wow.
Now, Plessy versus Ferguson that creates segregation. Plessy, Homer Plessy is his name, and I showed pictures of Homer Plessy to my students, And they look at him and they go like, well, that's a white man. No, he was black because he had 1/16 blood in his line, and nobody knew that he was descendants of blacks like that until a white man who knew his family saw him sitting in the white section of the train. And he complained about it, that there's a black sitting in the white section. And everybody goes, where? There. He says, a white man. No, I know his family. He is descendants of black.
Interesting.
And that's how segregation got started.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Larry, this book is available now, Paradox of Freedom, A History of Black Slaveholders in America. Again, you have just recently, tell folks as we wrap up tonight, you recently won an award this past weekend recognizing this book, and I know that's helped you. And again, we'll talk about how can folks get this book.
Yeah. You can go to scuppernongpress.com and order it straight from the publisher. Or if you want my autograph on it, it's very simple. You can go to booksbylarry.com and order from there. Softbounds are $20, hardbounds are $30. I try to keep my prices low. I'm not out. I realize I'm not going to get rich as a writer, but I try to keep them low. And the shipping rate is the post office shipping rate, so I keep the shipping rate low. I mean, sometimes the shipping rate is less than Amazon that charges. But booksbylarry.com, you can order straight from there. You can use your credit card, your debit card right there. And it will take your payment. And as soon as a message comes to me, I ship the book out next day. Usually it takes about 4 to 5 days for you to get the book, because I do the postage rate. I don't do a speed rate. That way it saves you money. And I keep the prices low that way. But, Tennesseans, if you really want to get a copy of the book, come to the Forest Boyhood Home Pilgrimage in June, and I'll have a booth set up. And
you'll have copies and can get it personalized. And I know I'll show mine here. It's autographed. And Larry, I got mine, I think, in less than a week after I ordered it from your website. So
you were one of the first ones that ordered, I think, when it first came out. But go to the website, booksbylarry.com, and you can get that book. And you can read up on it. It's got a synopsis about the book. And it also indicates that it won the Douglas Southall Freeman Literary Award in History. And if you want some of my earlier works, are there as well. Now, a lot of my books, the stock is kind of low because this book, last weekend, I sold out completely of my older books.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I took 4 cases of books, and I only brought back 1 case.
Well, you had a good weekend.
Oh yeah. But I just got a new shipment of softbounds of the new book, and I looked to get my older books to come in within a couple of weeks to get restocked. You can look at it; it'll tell you what books I've got available at this time. Or I can, it indicates a website where you can get it.
Sure.
Besides myself, you can go to Amazon, or you can go to Scuppernong Press, or whatever, Barnes and Noble, and so forth. My book is on sale with Barnes and Noble, Books A Million. But if you want that personalized autograph, order straight from me, booksbylarry.com.
Well, Larry, as we wrap up our conversation tonight, what's in the future? Are you working on something new? What's coming out next?
Well, I got burned out on this one, of course, after 3 years of thinking about it. Like we talked about, John, somebody made a real joke that it took me to write a book about Black people to become well-known and winning this major award like this. And I laughed it off. But 3 years of focusing on this, my mind got into a burnout, and I'm still touring with this book. Everywhere I go, they ask me to do presentations. I have a PowerPoint presentation, and
there's so much information. And we talked beforehand that you've got, even in the future, if you look to do a second volume, there's so much more information that you've compiled. So you've really become Larry, I think we could say really close to an expert on the subject. You've got the
I
knowledge
wouldn't
on
say expert. I don't think anybody can say they know everything on a subject. But my next book that I'm working on chapter 3 of, I started back in January, and I hopefully will wrap it up before the end of the year so I can get it to the publisher. Is called Beauregard Digs In. It's the Siege of Corinth. The Siege of Corinth. And there's not a standalone book out there on the siege. It's usually on the siege and the battle, or the siege is mentioned and they focus on the Battle of Corinth. But this was the Siege of Corinth that happened right after Shiloh. And Beauregard was in command of the Army of Mississippi at that time that becomes the Army of Tennessee.
Another great book coming out. And you're saying the end of the year, when you think it'll be ready?
Well, I got to kick myself and get it in high gear right now. I've only got 2, almost 3 complete chapters, and I'm shooting for 10. I mean, I've got the information, but I just want to
now got to compile it and put it into form.
Yeah, put it in a narrative form and make sure that my facts are straight, because I believe in documenting everything in case somebody wants to know, well, where did you get this from? So
that's good. Yeah. Larry McCluney's been our guest tonight. He's a past SCV commander-in-chief, author, and historian. Great information tonight, Larry. We've had great comments, and I think for a good viewership tonight, I think folks have really loved this discussion, and we could probably talk 2 or 3 more shows about this. Very interesting. Learned some things I didn't know tonight myself that I want to go research more on. So great information.
Well, great. I'm glad I could do it for you. And then hopefully everybody enjoyed the presentation tonight. And, don't hesitate to buy a copy. And if you got questions, shoot me. And, go to confederate@suddenlink.net and email me or something other like that.
Absolutely. Well, again, you're getting some nice comments. We're putting a few of those up on tonight, and folks that are enjoying the show, and you've had several folks on tonight. We appreciate all those that are viewing and joining in the conversation. Larry, well, I'm going to let you go tonight. We're going to come back after this break, and we're going to wrap up with a few things happening in the Tennessee division. And Larry, thank you so much. Know the door is always open anytime, and appreciate your support of SCB Chat and Tennessee Tuesday. And we'll see you in June at the Forest Boyhood Home.
All right, John. Well, if anybody needs a program, reach out to me, and I'll do a program for you. And y'all have a great night tonight.
All right. We appreciate Larry tonight. Let's go ahead and take this next break. We'll be coming right back on Tennessee Tuesday.
There is a place nestled in the rolling farmland of southern Middle Tennessee. A home constructed in 1837, nearly lost to the ravages of war. Saved by a servant and a Confederate general. A place where families loved and lost. If walls could talk, what stories could be told? If a place, a home, can feel love, loss, pain, surely this is one of those places. Nearby is a more recent structure, and inside are the stories of heroes and heroines, stories of battles won and lost, stories of sacrifices made by the people of its native soil. A place that will tell the true and complete story of the Southland and the war fought for its freedom. From the causes that led to the conflict to the modern-day struggles to protect Southern history. Historic Elm Springs and the Confederate Museum at Elm Springs are the general headquarters for the Sons of Confederate Veterans. A place where the story of the Southland and its historic struggle is preserved and told. Come and discover your history.
And welcome back into Tennessee Tuesday on this May the 19th. Hope you're doing well tonight. We're glad you are with us this evening. Again, thanks to Larry McCluney, who was our guest tonight on the program, and talking about the new book, Paradox of Freedom, A History of Black Slaveholders in America. Great information, a great book you can pick up, booksbylarry.com. Well, a couple of things we want to mention that have been going on in the Tennessee division, and we want to give a shout out to some of these folks here, and we'll share some of these images here. This is sent in to us from the Otho French Straw Camp 176 out of Union City in Obion County. They presented three General William Hicks Jackson Agricultural Leadership Awards, and this first one we'll mention here is Dylan Curtis, who is at South Fulton in the FFA there. So congratulations to him. Also others, they gave three of these. And this young man here is Carson Homer, who is from Obion County Central. So glad to recognize him and his work in the FFA. And also Kara Capps there and Barry Sowell there, the Jeffrey Forrest Brigade commander, presenting her with her award. So congratulations to her and all those that received awards in our agricultural awards. Also, this next gentleman who has been on our show tonight, Channing Green, he's joined us before, and Channing is a man that works in cemeteries all across the state of Tennessee and recently received this recognition there from the state of Tennessee there in that Certificate of Merit. So congratulations to Channing Green being recognized for his work he does across Tennessee. Also, of course, we've been given several of those awards for FFA students across Tennessee. This is a great award that was put together a few years ago, and many camps and brigades have been giving this award. This is from Jackson County High School. Aiden Jenkins receiving the Jackson Agricultural Award, so congratulations to him. And there is James Turner and Rich Garcia presenting him there with his award. Also, we always love when we have new members join the Sons of Confederate Veterans, and we want to recognize this gentleman, Paul Matheny, who is the newest member of the Champ Ferguson Standing Stone Camp of 2014. So congratulations to him and welcome aboard to the SCV. There he is being sworn in at the camp meeting. So congratulations to him, and we're glad to have him as a member of the Sons of Confederate Veterans here in Tennessee. So there's a few things that have been sent in to us. If you have something happening with your camp or brigade in Tennessee, we'd like to feature that on the program. So send those in to me or Jason, and we'd be happy to share that and promote the good work that's being done in the Tennessee division. Well, it's time to wrap up this edition of the show. It's been a great program tonight on this May the 19th. We always thank you for watching. We'll be back again next week at the same time for another show. Jason Boshier should be back as the co-host with us next week. He had his camp meeting tonight. So again, that's why he's not with us this evening. Again, a shout out to our sponsors of tonight's program, Dr. Chris Cummings, of course, past Commander-in-Chief Larry McCluney, as well as the 31st Regiment Engraving, the Museum at Market Hall in Charleston, South Carolina, Beauregard's Taylor, and the Sam Davis Home and Museum, our show sponsors. Also, thank you to our Patreon members that support the SCB Chat and Tennessee Tuesday. You can go to scbchat.com if you'd like to learn more about how you can support the programming on the network. Also, let's go ahead and promo some other shows before we say goodbye as we wrap up on this Tuesday night. Don't forget, tomorrow night, Wednesday evening, is Look Around Florida. That will be at 7 p.m. Again, Sean McFall hosts that program, the Florida Man. So we look forward to that program tomorrow night. And then on Thursdays is Look Around the Confederation. Don't forget, the first Thursday night is Commander's Comments, where the Commander-in-Chief will be on with Moose. And then the other Thursday nights look at activities that happen around the Confederation. And then on Friday night in the Friends of Douglas Southall Freeman Facebook group, you can join there with David Pope, and that's at 7 p.m. on Friday evenings. You can go join that group to watch his show. Always very educational and always great programs. And then on Sunday night, most every Sunday night, Hardy on History with Michael Hardy. That's at 7:30. And if you search Hardy on History, you'll find that. Always a great program there. He's a great friend, great historian. And we continue to remember the Hardy family in our prayers there with the loss of a loved one there with Mr. Hardy. So we are thinking about him. And I know he's already back busy and speaking at several locations. So again, thanks to everybody that's been with us tonight. I see some more comments as we wrap up. Again, appreciate Al being with us, and a great show tonight. I think it was a fantastic show. Larry did an excellent job with the program, and David Pope jumping in there as well. Great show as always. And we appreciate Jeff and the many others that have commented, and we like to feature some of those comments throughout the show. Well, have yourself a great rest of this week. Looking forward to being back with you on next Tuesday night. We'll have another great show lined up. Have yourself a great rest of this week. Take care. And one more thing, remember, I need to say this before we wrap up. Memorial Day is coming up. We always remember our those that have gone on that either gave their life in time of combat and war. And, of course, those that passed on later in life, we remember them on Memorial Day. Of course, Memorial Day in our country with Southern roots, of course, and then Confederate Memorial Day coming up across the South in Tennessee, which will be in June. Remember to get out and honor your ancestors and recognize them by placing a flag or memorial on their grave, and we never forget their service. Have yourself a great night, everybody. Take care, and God bless you.